just what is the spiritual significance of the four emotions of distress, perplexity, fear, and mourning that we find in the Olivet Discourse that will be reactions of the unsaved people on Judgment Day? We've been working through a series on the Olivet Discourse. Jesus is on the Mount of Olives. He's given a prophecy about the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, saying there'll be not one stone left upon another of those temple buildings. And the disciples, of course, had two questions. Well, when are the temple buildings destroyed? And secondly, what is the sign of the end of the world and the second coming of Jesus Christ? The Olivet Discourse has two key events that's being talked about here. It's the Great Tribulation, which is that intense time of tribulation prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ, and also the events of the last day, the second coming of Christ for salvation and judgment. In our video description, we have many related links to other videos and things about prophecy. Please consider subscribing to this channel. There's a little red button in the bottom right-hand corner. Okay, before we go on in this study about the conditions of how people are going to react to Judgment Day, we have to recall that prophecy is relatively simple. There's a church age of about 2,000 years. There's a period of apostasy, which we're in right now, that begins near the end of this period. Then we go into this little season called Great Tribulation. It's a Great Tribulation not on the world, but on the church. It features the Antichrist, takes a seat in the temple, the church, the abomination of desolations in the church, and the church is completely Babylon. And then we have, after the Great Tribulation, the last day where there's heavenly signs, the sun, the moon, the stars, the second coming of Jesus Christ. It's the resurrection of the dead for salvation and judgment. And we're going to look in this video about those unsaved people, how they're going to react to Judgment Day, and that's with distress, perplexity, fear, and mourning. And then after that, that ushers in the eternity and the new heavens and the new earth. Just a quick review. We've been focusing in on this sign of the end of the world. What shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? The disciples wanted to know. And signs are symbols. They're real events that are going to happen, but they have a more important spiritual truth. They have symbolic meaning. And we've been studying in several videos here that these signs will be in the sun, the moon, and the stars. The sun is darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven are shaken. But we're going to look at the reaction to all that, to those signs, by the unsaved people of the world. Okay, and here's the key passage that we're going to look at. We saw in the last video there'll be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. And upon the earth there's distress of nations with perplexity. The sea and the waves are roaring. And we're going to look at that in the next video, by the way, the sea and the waves roaring. We're going to see men's hearts are failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. There's fearful sights and great signs. Now, we see in the Luke passage of the Olivet Discourse, we see the three things: the distress of nations, and we're going to find out what that means spiritually, perplexity, and then the men's hearts failing for fear. But there's one other characteristic, or one other reaction that we find in the book of Matthew, which is on the next slide. In Matthew we see, then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. At this time, then, it literally means at that time, this is the last day we're talking about, there's heavenly signs, the signs of the sun, the moon, and the stars. They're not given their light. And the tribes of the earth, the people of the earth, mourn. And that mourn is the Greek word kopto. It literally means chop, to beat the breast. It's the same thing we find, a parallel passage in the book of Revelation. Behold, he comes with the clouds, and every eye shall see him. They also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. They're going to wail, and that word wail there is that same Greek word kopto, which means to warn. So we're going to go on now and look at those four things that are going to happen, the four ways people react. We're going to look at that in the slides that follow. So let's go on and look at distress, perplexity, fear, and mourning. This is what's covered in the passage in Matthew and the passage in Luke. This is the Olivet Discourse. It's how people are going to react to the second coming of Christ, which is Judgment Day. They're going to have distress, perplexity, fear, and mourning. First, we're going to look at the distress of nations. Okay, so let's look a little bit closer at that word distress of nations. There's going to be distress. It's the Greek word son, och. It's from soneko. It means to hold together. It's to be together and hold, which is a word that means stress. It's being squeezed together. We see a parallel passage in 1 Samuel 13 that talks about this. When the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were distressed, then the people hid themselves in caves and thickets and in rocks and places and pits. They were afraid. And we're going to look at that more in upcoming slides about the fear of God. But distress is they're under stress. And isn't that what stress means to people today? When we're afraid of what can happen, consequences, we get stressed out. And the people are going to be stressed out, very much so. People that are not saved, on Judgment Day, they cannot cast their cares on God. We see the great assurance and the comfort that God's people have that we can cast all our cares upon him, for he cares about you. 1 Peter 5:7, so that we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear what man shall do unto me. But the unsaved cannot say that. They're under stress. They have no helper. They have fear, as we will see in upcoming slides. We see that the nations represent, of course, the unsaved, because for God's people, the last day is a wonderful, joyous day. People that are still alive will be raptured with Christ. The dead will be resurrected. But for those unsaved people in the world, it's a day of stress. The nations, how art thou fall from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut to the ground, which did weaken the nations? Weaken the nations. Isaiah 34, the indignation of the Lord is upon all nations. Nations mean Gentiles. It's a word that's often used of those who are unsaved. Just like Satan has impact on the unsaved, he weakens the nations. But the judgment of God, the indignation of the Lord is upon all nations, and that's pointing to the last day. And his fury upon all their armies. He has utterly destroyed them. He has delivered them to be slaughtered. All the nations, all the Gentiles, the vast majority of this people are unsaved. And they're referred to as the nations, or the Gentiles. Then said the Lord, go forth and fight against those nations, as when he fought in the day of battle. There's many, many, many passages all through the Bible where the nations represent the Gentiles. Now, it is true that the Gentiles from the nations, there's a vast amount of people that will be saved, but in the context of this passages, it's pointed to the unsaved people who are going to receive judgment. So we see God's judgment of distress. Zephaniah is a heavily prophetic book of the Bible. And we see again here, I will bring distress upon men. The last day will be stressful, that they shall walk like blind men because they have sinned against the Lord. They know they're guilty. People that are unsaved, they know they're doing wrong things. Neither their silver nor their gold should be able to deliver them in the day of the Lord's wrath. That's the last day. That's Judgment Day. But the whole land shall be devoured by the fire of his jealousy. God is a jealous God. He covets and he desires our attention, his creation's attention. He shall make even a speedy riddance of all them that dwell in the land. God's judgment of distress. Okay, now we're going to move and look at the next thing, which is perplexity. And we need to understand what that word perplexity means. So we see again in Luke 21:25, one of the characteristics how the unsaved people react to Judgment Day is with perplexity. And that word perplexity, it's the Greek word aporia. Aporia is from aporio. It literally means, and when you see the A at the beginning, it's without, not able to go. Poria means to go, not going. There's no place to go. It's often translated in the New Testament as perplexed or to have doubt. You don't know what to do. You don't know where to go. You're perplexed. They're perplexed. They have nowhere to go, no way out. Really, it's pointing to there's no escape from Judgment Day. Some people think that they're going to escape. They're not going to. They're not interested in God, and somehow they're never going to be judged for it. And that's not true. There's no escape on the last day. How shall we escape if we neglect so great salvation? Hebrews 2:3. Jesus, Matthew 23, you serpents, you generation of vipers, how can you escape the damnation of hell? There is no escape for Judgment Day. They're perplexed. They don't know what to do. There's no way out. Hebrews 12:25. See that you refuse not him that speaks. God is speaking to us through the word of God. For they escape not who refused him that spoke on earth, much more shall we not escape if we turn away from him that speaks from heaven. We can't escape from God. God is speaking to us. The Bible is all through the world. The witness of the sun, the moon, the stars is all out there. There's no excuse. There's no escape. 1 Thessalonians 5:3, for when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. They're perplexed. That means that they have no escape, and they know it. Okay, now we're going to look at the third thing that people react to, and that's their hearts fail for fear. It's a very fearful thing. Just imagine the sun, the moon, and the stars are not given light. The stars are fallen from heaven. It's Judgment Day. The Son of Man, Christ, is coming on the clouds of glory. Okay, we see that back in Luke 21:26, men's hearts fail them for fear. They're so afraid that their hearts are failing because they're looking after. They see the things that are coming on the earth. They see the sign. What's the sign of Christ's return? The sun, the moon, and the stars not giving light. There's no more gospel. It's time for judgment. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And we see, by the way, this hearts failing them for fear. First, the word men there, it's the Greek word anthropos, which just means humankind. There's other Greek words for male and female, but men there is anthropos. It means all people. Their hearts are going to fail them. And when we look at that phrase, hearts failing them, it's really one word. It's not really the heart, the cardia involved there. It's aposoucho. Aposucho, which literally means off life. Apo means to be off, and sucho, which really is the soul, but it's also translated as life. There's the soul and the life is departing them. It's being taken away from them. Looking after, dokia, which means apprehensive. They're understanding. They're starting to see what's going to happen to them. They're going to understand. Judgment Day, because they see these fearful sights and these great signs. They know this is it. This is the last day. So their life is being taken away from them. Their soul, our soul is the connection to this earth and to God's creation. It's being taken away. Okay, just a quick review, by the way, on spirit, soul, and body. We've done a whole series on spirit, soul, and body because it's really fundamental to understand that there's three parts of a person: the spirit, the soul, and the body. When we're saved, our spirit is the connection to God. Our soul, or life, is the connection to God's creation, both now and in eternity. Our spirits, when we become saved, we were spiritually dead and we're born again. Now we're spiritually alive. The unsaved people, though, are spiritually dead, and Judgment Day is the outer darkness and separation. Christians are a new man. Their spirit is saved. But the soul, and this word aposucho, is talking about the soul is being taken away. For the unsaved person, the soul is lost, destroyed on Judgment Day. And that's exactly what that word means, aposucho. It's taken away their life, taken away their relationship with the creation. And because they're not going to be able to enter in to the new heavens and the new earth. And of course, the Christian, our soul is saved on that last day. Our spirit is saved when we're born again. Our soul is saved on the last day where we enter into New Jerusalem with God for eternity. Okay, with that as a background, though, now let's go back to that word aposucho. They're losing their soul. Fear not them which can kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul. But rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. And hell, there's the Greek word Gina or Gehenna. It's eternal separation from God. The soul is destroyed on Judgment Day for those who are unsaved. Luke 12, I forewarn you, whom you shall fear. Fear him which, after he has killed, has power to cast into hell. Yea, I say unto you, fear him. We're to fear God. All Christians, all people in this world are to fear God because we know God has the power over life and death. Unsaved people, though, during their life in this world, their souls do not fear God. Jeremiah 5. God says, fear ye not me, saith the Lord? Will you not tremble at my presence? Oh, they sure will tremble at his presence on the last day. They will fear because they didn't believe. They thought it would never happen, but it is going to happen. Romans 3. The way of peace have they not known? There is no fear of God before their eyes. That's the natural condition of all people. Before we're saved, nobody fears God. They don't think it will ever happen. They're not worried about the consequences or eternal life or what happens at death. They're not worried about it. Revelation 15, who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify their name? For thou art only are holy. All nations, there's that word nations again, Gentiles, shall come and worship before thee, for their judgments are made manifest. On Judgment Day, everybody is going to see God and they're going to fear him. This fear on the last day will result in, and again, this is symbolic language. It's going to result in people wanting to hide from God because they know they're wrong. They know it's now Judgment Day. They didn't fear him before, but now they're going to fear him. Every knee will bow. Every knee will bow. They hide. We see in Revelation 6, which, again, this is the sixth seal of Revelation. I'm going to tag this slide with the video we've already done on this, but we see the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the chief captains, the mighty, the bondmen, every free man, everybody is going to want to hide themselves. They think that they can hide from God because they fear him and said, hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, because they know it's Judgment Day, for that great day of his wrath has come. That's what the last day is about, being afraid and people hiding. We see another parallel passage in Revelation 11 regarding the resurrection of the two witnesses, which is symbolic because it's the last day. It's the resurrection of God's people. But the unsaved people have great fear because they see that what's happening. They see the resurrection. They see God's people glorified with Christ, and their enemies beheld them. Men want to, or all people want to hide from God because the fear of the wrath of the Lamb. We have another parallel passage in Isaiah 2. They shall go into the holes of the rocks, into the caves of the earth, for the fear of the Lord, the fear of God, because it's Judgment Day, for the glory of his majesty, when he arises to shake terribly the earth, shaken so they can remove what can't, those things that can be shaken. In that day a man shall cast his idols of silver, his idols of gold, which he made each one to worship. All these things we have in this world, all the idolatry that's all around us with homes and cars and all type of things that we worship, to the moles and the bats to go, and they go into the clefts of the rocks and the top of the ragged rocks because of the fear of the Lord and for the glory of his majesty. They see the heavenly signs. They see Christ coming on the clouds of glory. He's coming to shake the earth. It's Judgment Day. Unsaved people hide in fear on Judgment Day. Okay, now let's go on and look at the last thing. We've looked at distress. They stress. They see what's going to happen. They're perplexed. They don't know where to go. There's no escape. There's fear of God and what's going to happen. But they also experience mourning. And we're going to see that it's the mourning that all these riches and pleasures that they had in this world are going to be all gone. So we see in Luke 26:25, woe unto you that are full, for you shall hunger. Woe unto you that laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep. Unsaved people are having a good old time on this earth. They're enjoying their pleasures and luxuries and their food and all their pleasures. But it's good for now, but they shall mourn and weep. And that's what Judgment Day is going to be like. James 4, you adulterers and adulteresses, you spiritually fornicating people who worship other gods and idols, and you marry them instead of God. Know you not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? People are in love with the world. They're in love with the world system, everything about the world. They find their pleasures. Whosoever be called friend of the world is the enemy of God. But rather be afflicted and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to heaviness. Because we want to fear God. And all these people that enjoy all these things, there is a judgment day where there'll be great mourning. We also see in James 5, the rich will weep and howl. And on this world, there's many people. They might not think they're rich, but they have everything they need. They have food, they have shelter, they have pleasures of all these things. You rich men, weep and howl, for your miseries shall come upon you. And that's on the last day. There's miseries. It's judgment day. Your riches are corrupted. Your garments are moth-eaten. All this stuff in the world doesn't mean anything. The only thing that means anything is our relationship with Christ and our relationship with eternity. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you. You have heaped treasure together for the last days. Behold the hire of the laborers, which is of you kept back by fraud. You have lived in pleasure on the earth. You have condemned and killed the just. Another example of the love of this world. Okay, there's one last type of mourning that we have to look at. On the last day, there'll be great mourning, and we see the same words used in the book of Revelation. Revelation 17 and 18 talk about Babylon. Babylon is the false Christian church and parachurches. In the Great Tribulation, churches are going to be false. They teach false gospels. They teach idolatry in the church, worshiping other gods and idols. Satan takes a seat in the temple. And we see the sins of Babylon. And I'll tag this video with our series that we've done in Babylon. But we see fornication, worshiping Satan's kingdom in the church. The church is worldly. It's full of idolatry. The church condones people that live rich and luxurious lifestyles. There's no end. Merchandise, and it's rich and luxurious living. The church condones all that. Sorcery, deception, false gospels, and prophecy. And people are going to mourn because of this. They love the church. They love their mega church. They love their contemporary music. The blood of God's servants, because these churches in the Great Tribulation will persecute God's true people. They don't want to hear the truth of the Word of God. Just a quick summary of this video. Distress, perplexity, fear, and mourning. It's the unsaved world's reaction to Judgment Day. We saw the distress of nations because of impending judgment. They're feeling stress, all stressed out. They see the sun, the moon, the stars, and the powers of heaven shaken. Perplexity, they realize that there's no way to escape. There's no escape. There's nobody that's going to help them because it's God's judgment day. It's the day of the wrath of the Lamb. They're not able to hide. They have that fear of judgment. Their hearts are failing. In other words, they're losing their souls because they see their soul is the connection. Their soul, which is also life, the connection to the creation, is going away because they did not fear God. But now in the last day, they have to fear God. And they mourn. They love their previous riches. They loved their Babylon church. They loved all the things, the pleasures of this world that they've received. Because these false churches condoned all that and didn't warn people of impending judgment. Please consider subscribing to this channel, and thank you very much for watching this video.